special episode of Comic Watchers in tribute to the devastating loss of Stan Lee. Comic Watchers is brought to you by Comic Watch. Comic Watch is your source for all your comics and media news and reviews written by fans for fans. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Spread the word that we're coming for the clickbait sites. It's our time now. I'm your host, Cody, coming to you from Hawaii, and here's the rest of our frightful foursome.
Brian from superheroesbookclub.com.
Hey, Brian, coming from you live from Salt Lake City.
I'm John Jack. You can find me on my Facebook group for the love of comic books, on Twitter at JohnBatusiJack, or on Facebook as John Jack, in one of my many pages.
As you all know, yesterday we saw the passing of a great comic book legend in Stan Lee at the age of 95 in a hospital in Los Angeles. It wasn't an unexpected death, but it was a death that hit the comic book community incredibly hard, right in the heart. We reached out on a number of Facebook fan groups and websites to ask for people's opinions and takes on how this event impacted them, or share stories that they had that reminded them of Stan Lee and what he brought to many people's lives. We'd like to share a few of those with you now. From Palmer Eldrick. He says, so this was a 1993 at a convention in Margate, Florida called PowerCon 93, just weeks after the premiere of Night of the Sentinels Part 1. At the convention, 4 cons were really a big deal. Stan does a Q&A with some of the fans before doing autographs, for free, the good old days. And people were asking basic stuff. And the little 12-year-old me raises his hand when he calls on me to say, so what happened to Beast? And he's like, sorry, true believer, but you're going to have to wait until the season premiere to find out. And he answers some more questions. And again, this was a pretty small event, and there were only a couple dozen kids there. And I raise my hand again, and he calls on me. The thing is, they don't show what happens to Beast. And he's like I said, you have to wait for the premiere. And he goes back to a few other questions, and I'm getting angsty and flustered, so I raise my hand again, and he kind of hesitates. But he calls on me, and I'm just like, is Beast dead or what? And the few other kids are like, yeah. And Stan gets flustered and kind of starts to raise his voice, and he's just like, you are going to have to wait. And he calms down for a second, lowers his voice, and wait for the season premiere, true believer. He emphasizes true believer, and that's it. I annoyed Stan Lee, and it helps if you read the parts in his voice. The story usually kills because I do a great Stan impression. I don't. But that was from Palmer Eldrick. From Abel Duarte. I remember being about 10 years old when I saw Uncanny X-Men comic. I quickly immersed myself in the world of outcast mutants. I myself at the time was living through a very tough and troubled childhood. For me, I would escape into the world of mutants and be set free. I would fight along with the injustices of the world right beside them. At 11, I picked up Spider-Man and again fell in love with a nerdy kid who had problems similar to my own. He didn't have a lot of money and was teased in school. He had great power, and with that ability. Stan's characters helped me want to be a hero and help people in the world. They helped shape me into a better person when the world and situations around me could have led me down a much darker path. His stories kept me going on days where I wanted to give up, forever be grateful for that. Thanks for being a hero. I'm not choked up, you're choked up. From Brody Van Z. He made a world that wasn't all black and white, full of characters with deep and powerful, sometimes crazy stories, but were still relatable. Without him, Marvel Comics today would be incredibly different. He gave me my heroes. Jesse Delago, a true pioneer in civil rights, as a game related to the X-Men and their fight to be accepted in a world that hates and fears them. Excelsior, Stan. From Chris Berlingo. He let us into his imagination so we could see the world through the eyes of a reason. I'll always be grateful. By Herman Robinson. For me, my entry through the first X-Men film. My love of superheroes slowly started to grow, and after learning the movie was based on a comic made by Marvel, my obsession with not only reading about heroes, but creating them as well skyrocketed. Even though the X-Men helped me in coming to terms and embracing being gay and helping me cope with my Asperger's, Stan Lee helped me in discovering that I wanted to make comics a career. Thanks to him being his crazy, funny, confident self who wanted to inspire people and make them smile through his wild and crazy stories, I know that's what I want to do too. Use comics to bring joy to people and help them find themselves like Stan helped me find Myers. Excelsior. Oops. From Amanda Rogers. I was very poor and had no friends as a child, and both my parents worked, so I was alone a lot. Full of people that I could connect with. Really involved in their lives. They were my friends. Those pages were my safe haven. Many years later, I met my husband because we were both fans of the film Mallrats, in which Stan Lee had a cameo. We even included comics in our wedding vows. Marvel has always been essential to me as the air I breathe, and Stan will always be the face and soul of Marvel. He meant more to so many people than he ever knew. From Vern Node. I was 12, reading Silver Age comics from DC until Stan came up with the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Daredevil, etc. I was hooked and spent a lot of my summers reading Stan's stories. He will be missed and his legacy will live on. By Eric Moomin. When I was a kid, I didn't really get into comics. I was the 9-year-old kid who was reading Edgar Allan Poe horror stories, any novel, book, magazine that had horror aliens in it. I didn't know there were horror comic books. Well, one day, my stepfather put a stack of Marvel comics on the table and said, "Read these." I was entertained, but not so much as when I found out Marvel had Werewolf by Night, Dracula, old Strange Tales comics. I was hooked from that point on. By Barry Harker. I was 9 years old when I read my first comic. It was an Uncanny X-Men 200-something. I remember reading about these characters that were very different and everyone hated and feared them. At that time in my life, I was a very angry kid and had just moved to another state and didn't know anyone. I had an East Coast accent that was everyone made fun of my full name. Then one day I was at the grocery store and saw an X-Men comic, so I started to flip through and read it. I fell in love, and from that moment on I loved the X-Men. I felt like I could relate because they were being persecuted because of who they were. Those comics taught me not just to love myself, but who I was. Not just to love myself because of who I was, but to stand up for the people that couldn't. After that first X-Men comic, I never looked back. I will stand up for what's right no matter what. It's all because a guy named Stan saw the injustices that were going on in the 60s and throughout the world, and that prompted him to create the X-Men and, of course, so many others. He will never know the impact that comics has done for me, but thank you from the bottom of my heart for creating the X-Men, not just for me, but for everyone. You changed my life, Stan. Rest in peace, Stan the Man. Excelsior. From Jason Summerall. When I was very sick as a child and had a hard time making friends, and I was an outcast. My social skills were underdeveloped and I couldn't read. My mom bought me a comic book to teach me to read. It was an X-Men comic about a band of outcast mutants who wanted to make the world and everyone in it better. One character I really related to as a child was a character who could heal from any sickness, and a group who were bullied like me. Sorry, I just had a scrolling problem. Because of this, I started reading any comic I could pick up that had the X-Men, and I started making friends, and I started reading past my grade level. Stan Lee literally held a version of myself. And he taught me also to not due to their differences, to treat people equally, and to never give up. In my heart, he will always be with me and a part of my life. Heaven has a real superhero. From Helen Crane. It's because of him, through the X-Men, that I learned that it was okay to be different, that it was okay to be weird, that it was okay to be a mutant. Yes, I am a real mutant. Please feel free to share this. From John Wick. He was my guide through fandom since I was a young lad. He was the face of nerd culture. This man could very well be the most prominent figure in the entertainment industry for his work. He was always so excited, so happy for his work and for others. I can't say enough to thank this man for all of his impact in our world. And from our very own Bethany Pope. This is not my story, but I felt it was appropriate to share. As you know, I'm in China. One of my students just found out that Stan Lee died, and she called me because she's grieving very deeply, and she knew I'd understand. And I do understand. This girl grew up in a very conservative home. She's a tiger, and she's had to live like a mouse. Stanley helped her build a world where she could be herself for once, if only mentally. That's not a small thing. And I've got one more here from comic historian Bill Field. Pardon me for a second. I've got kind of a long queue here. So Bill says, Stan was always great to me. I saw him every 7 years since I was 14. I told him this when he was 90. He said he'd see me in 7 years.
So we wanted to give everybody a voice, stating that we wanted to create a memorial for Stanley because he's done so much great work with not just being a writer, an editor, but just as a human being. So we wanted to make sure that anybody who wanted to be part of a memorial through Comic Watch was able to. So thank you for all who have shared. I do want to pull up some writers that also had some things that they wanted to write. Dan Slott said, no writer or their work has had enough profound effect on my life as that the Stan, the man Lee. In the history that is written in words, no one can come close. His stories will live on forever for every generation. Never the end, always to be continued. The Excelsior. Gail Simone said, yesterday I was flooded with requests from media outlets to talk about Stan Lee's passing. I am sure that is all well intended. They are nice people, but I just can't yet. She includes, can't explain it, but I feel like I'd rather trade memories of him with all of you here than talk about it in an interview. Reading all the stories of the people of how he impacted people's lives, it was the nicest thing about a horrible day. Jason Aaron says, as I am sitting here trying to put words in my mouth of the characters he made immortal, characters that have literally changed my life, all I can really say, or all I could really come up with is thank you, Stan. Frank Miller, devastated by my pal Stan's passing. He was a child inspiration and instructor to me when I was just getting started, and generally a sweet man. We will miss him terribly. Donnie Katz. I don't have words for this. My life has been incredibly changed by the man's creations and words. I am going to celebrate him today by putting the work and writing of his characters the absolutely best way that I know how. Thank you, Stan. I love you. True believers, Excelsior. Chris Evans includes, there will never be another Stan Lee. For decades, he provided both young, old, with adventures, escapes, comfort, confidence, inspiration, strength, friendship, and joy. He excluded love and kindnesses and have incredible mark on so many lives. Excelsior.
So, I mean, that is just the tip of the iceberg of the outpouring of support and love that Stan Lee received yesterday from the world over. Yeah, and this is a death that kind of transcends nerddom or fandom, but actually really impacts any form of popular culture in the United States and across the world. So I'd like to kick it over to you guys and let's hear your personal Stan Lee thoughts and eulogizing. JJ.
So the first comic that I can really remember reading was Essential Spider-Man Volume 2, which my aunt got me for my 6th birthday. I was an avid reader as a child. Essential Spider-Man Volume 2 collects issues 21 through 43 plus annuals 2 and 3. And enclosed are some, the first appearance of the Scorpion, the first Spider-Man Human Torch team up, first appearance of the Rhino, the infamous The Final Chapter, which is I don't, that one where Spider-Man lifts all the wreckage off himself that was emulated in Spider-Man Homecoming. It's hard to overstate another headlight. It's hard to overstate the impact that he had on me as a child with his Spider-Man stories. I later went on to collect, as I grew older, all of the Essential Spider-Man volumes up through volume 6. They're out of print now, but I still have volumes 2 and 4. Volume 2, at this point, I have reread probably 50 to 100 times. The covers have fallen off. The pages started falling out, so I rebound it with duct tape. Had I ever had the chance to meet Stan Lee, that would have been the book I had him sign. And now I'll never have the chance. But sorry. His Thor work is incredible. His X-Men is, although not always my favorite, still groundbreaking. His Captain Marvel, Daredevil, like, the list is insane. The Avengers, I don't know if you know this, but the Avengers were created because Daredevil was late one month. And so rather than not ship a book, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby whipped up a team using existing characters, and created just an incredible thing. The Avengers were kind of the original team of larger-than-life personalities who didn't always get along because the Justice League never gave you a feeling that, like, they were all best friends. They all got along. They all knew how to work as a team. The Avengers were a bunch of leaders who all wanted to be leader. Every so often Thor will go off on his own like a jerk and screw everything up, or Captain America will try to assert his will over Hawkeye, and although Hawkeye joined during Roy Thomas's run. But the Avengers were a team unlike any other Silver Age team. Having read every single Stan Lee Silver Age Marvel book, he'll be missed. And that's it.
Herbs, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'd probably read, I don't know, at least over 100 yesterday, just within the first half hour of hopping onto social media. And it wasn't until I read one from one of my favorite comedians, Nick Swartzen, that I actually cried. But I'll put the tweet up in post. But it says, bought this hat yesterday in Hawaii and then heard the news today. One of the best to walk this earth and give such inspiration and imagination. Kids know who he is and create and use your imaginations. God bless your mind and soul, Stan. But it was this. I'm just gonna show it now for you guys, if you can even see it. That's the logo on the hat. It says Shoots. I don't know why it's mirrored, but it's just like, yeah, I know, right?
Well, he did it in Hawaii. Like, shoots is common vernacular out here too. Like, shoots, brah, instead of dang it.
Yeah, so it's totally something I would have loved as a kid, and that's what it reminded me of, because when I was a kid, Spider-Man was just as real to me as I actually saw Spider-Man once, a guy in a Spider-Man costume once in a mall during Christmas. So I'm already looking for costumed people. I'm already looking for, but he just happened to be there. At our mall, we had a talking Christmas tree, and we had Santa, and we had Spider-Man for some reason. But I don't know. Once I found out that some guy named Stan Lee was the one who created Spider-Man, essentially, I just thought that was pretty crazy, and that was pretty magical. It was so a big deal for me when I was younger, and especially once I started getting into the X-Men after I was introduced to them through the animated series when I was, I don't know, 13, 14. I was hooked. And yeah, I didn't expect his passing to affect me as much as it did. It's just an odd thing to have someone who created this stuff in the middle of their life be around for so long. It feels like he's just been around forever. He's this institution in and among himself, just of himself. And I don't know. Now he's gone and he's not. And I think that's maybe one of the hardest things to deal with. He's gone, but he's everywhere. It makes it easy to remember that you're grieving because you can't go anywhere. I can't look at anything in my house almost, at least not in this room. That doesn't remind me of what he created. So it's kind of it's a strange thing, but yeah, that's all I have.
Cody, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I guess speaking to what Derbs just said, right? That it's amazing how long he's been around. Like, we only really witnessed a small sliver of the things he did for the comic industry. He got that first job in Timely in 1939. He has almost been a part of the comics industry as long as Superman, our first comic superhero. Like, he is so ingrained of hobby of this industry, of this way of life for a lot of people, that I pulled out some of my leaks, and it was through X-Men, the animated series, that I first kind of got a taste of who Stan Lee was. There was a double VHS. VHS is an ancient method of watching video. For those of you that may be some of our younger viewers, I got a VHS tape of Night of the Sentinels Part 1 and 2 from Pizza Hut. And when you get to the end of those two episodes, it has an interview from Stan talking about kind of those early X-Men days of creating the X-Men, of going to the then publisher, Martin Goodman, and saying, I have this idea for a book, it's called The Mutants. And him saying, but nobody's going to know what a mutant is. And Stan saying, okay, we'll call them the X-Men, because they're extraordinary extra abilities and they're extra chromosome. And nobody ever questioned, nobody's going to know what an X-Man is either. A mutant's a real thing. An X-Man isn't really a real thing, but okay, let's go with it. And that's how the X-Men were born. And that kind of on-the-spot creativity, I think, is really, for me, the defining characteristic of his career. The ability to turn something, the showmanship, the P.T. Barnum nature of Stan. I mean, Stan Lee was Stan Lee's greatest character. So while there are many other writers that have picked up the reins and probably done better written stories and arcs with his creations, or his co-creations in certain cases, he was still that innovative force inside Marvel for decades. And even before Marvel was Marvel, he was still in there innovating and changing the way things were done. And I think that's just in any field, but especially in a creative. You're up, sir.
Yeah, so how I got into comics was also how Cody was saying that there was the Pizza Hut deal where you got 2 VHSs, or I think you could buy an extra one. It had the Night of the Sentinels Part 1 and Part 2. I actually remember the interviews being before the actual TV show. So you had to watch Stan. And I believe it actually came with a little comic book as well. So I was a fan of the DVD or the series, and then I got the comic book. And for me, that was it. That was all over. That's how I got into comics. So when I saw him, there was something magical about what he said that made me want to know everything about the X-Men. And to kind of echo what everybody else was saying about how he was this inspiration to everybody, that he created something or co-created something that made people feel okay. Last week, I kind of went on a rant about how you aren't necessarily always lonely, or that so many stories were very similar to mine. And it was empowering because at that time, that moment in time, it certifies that what I said last week, that nobody's ever alone. No matter what the situation is, no matter what you're going through, somebody else is going through it with you. And that you can find refuge in a character, in the X-Men, in Spider-Man. I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be with Stan Lee's creation, but that is where so many people were about, or that they were able to relate to something that he created. And it's not necessarily that he wrote for this whole time, it's that he was still the front face of so many ad or campaigns, that he was just there. He was present for his writing that he did help create. He helped create Marvel to what we watch. And I mean, it's not just Marvel that's feeling his effect, it's the entire comic universe. And I mean, I can't say enough good things, because without him, I don't know if I'd be the same person that I am today. So I will always forever be thankful for Stan Lee. I will forever be grateful for anything that he helped create. And I am so happy that within this industry that we're able to all be part of something. We're a small industry where, we may be a huge fan base, but we're still small. And no matter what you're going through in life, remember, there's somebody else going through the same thing that you're going through, and you're never alone. All you have to do is read an X-Men book or a comic book and realize that somebody that's going through the same thing is also reading it too, and that you're never alone. So I don't want to go too much into this, because I could actually talk more in hours and hours of this, and I'm trying really hard not to get emotional. So with that being said, I want to celebrate what he did. And so we're going to go ahead and move on from this and continue celebrating our show that he helped create so we can bring this show to you guys. So we're going to go ahead and wipe any tears that anybody may have. We're going to go ahead and continue on what we do best, or the worst, depending on what you on your views on watching this show. So I'm going to start this week off with 3 questions. Again, I threw them off last week. They answered it pretty well. So this week is actually going to be Marvel center-based. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question. Last week it was all positive. It was all, what is your favorite? What is your favorite? This week it's actually going to be, sorry, I forgot that I even wrote this down. So the first question is, what is your least favorite character in all the Marvel universe? It doesn't have to be X-Men. It doesn't have to be, and it could be hero, villain, whatever. I'm actually
pick me.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go with, I was going to pick Derbs because he wasn't here last week. So we'll go ahead and start with Cody, Derbs, and JJ.
Deadpool. Deadpool is hands down my least favorite Marvel character, and it sucks because I really liked Deadpool for a number of years, and then they found out. They found out that many of us love Deadpool, and then they started force-feeding us Deadpool, and then they started getting people that were maybe all-right writers, maybe not so all-right writers, to write Deadpool, so that he could have 4, 5 monthly titles, bi-weekly titles, one-shots, an endless parade of Deadpool down our throats. And then the movies came. And people loved the movies. And now, everywhere I look is Deadpool. Everywhere. Deadpool.
All right, Derbs, who is your least favorite Marvel character in the Marvel universe?
You're killing me here.
This is what he does.
It's kind of my niche.
John should go. I don't know.
Okay, JJ.
Dark Car Returns. Probably my least favorite, and in keeping with the theme of the night, is Betty Brant or Carol Danvers, Silver Age version, or Karen Page. Pretty much any female female team up to the protagonist was always just a pain in the butt. They were always jealous. Peter Parker kind of played it fast and loose with the other girls, Liz Allen or whatever, in his high school years. But Betty Brant took offense to every woman he ever talked to. She got jealous every time he left to go be Spider-Man. Let him go be Spider-Man. The book's called Spider-Man. Let him go be Spider-Man. All right, that's all I got to say about that.
All right, Durbridge, it's your turn. No turning back this time.
Well, I mean, that has never ended, John. I mean, it's one of the reasons I literally can't ingest any CW television, superhero television, because Felicity Smoke just chokes the life out of it for me. I can't do it. Anyway, I think the thing that I'm not really fond of, I can't pick just any one character, but there are some side character mutants right now that, and I mean, I guess I'm on that bandwagon where they're just some of these side character mutants I just can't stand. Their design is just so wacky and out there, and it's obvious they were meant to be that way, and that makes me hate them even more. But I've had too much to drink right now to be able to tell you what their names are.
Oh my god. No, I'm not taking this answer. You have to give me a name.
Oh my god.
What's that squirrely little dude with the pompadour? He got the Phoenix recently? You know the one.
Quentin.
He's the worst. I hate him.
Who's the green dude? Bloop?
Anoli?
No, Anol was fine.
Oh, is that his name? I don't even know.
No, it's the guy who looks like Slimer.
Oh, Goop.
Dupe.
Fuck Dupe.
All right. So while this was going on, I was more focused on Derbs giving his answer. I didn't actually think of mine. I would probably have to say my least favorite character. I'm going to take a lot of heat for this. The boss, Ross, may fire me for this, but it's going to be Wolverine. I'm over
Why?
it. Okay.
Why?
Why? He's just...
Defend your position.
Oh, man. To be honest with you, I hated him in the cartoon just because of his attitude. However, I do want to say, since me and JJ are doing the X-Men thing, the writing thing that we're doing, I had to read the Claremont, and it's completely from that air. Like, things that he'll say, I've heard him specifically, shut up, JJ, specifically say that he would say in X-Men animated series. So
let's hear a Wolverine growl. Come on, give me a Wolverine growl.
Why? No. Okay.
Yeah!
Okay, so Wolverine is just... And then when I got really into comic books, he was in every book. He's just eh. And then this new series that he has with him coming back, it's not good, guys. It's not. I'm sorry. I respect all the writers, and I love that you're being able to write, but it's just not for me. Okay, I'm gonna move on.
Yeah, it's similar to the Deadpool effect. He's everywhere.
Yeah.
He's everywhere.
Yeah, but for me, my Deadpool experience is a little different. I didn't actually get into it until the movies. So for me, it was like all fresh and new. So I had that new shiny.
It's you.
It is
You're
me.
You're one of them.
I am one of them.
I've liked him since.
You're the one.
I am the reason that Cody.
Shame.
I started collecting his books when his first self-titled came out in the 90s. So, I mean, I've been around for a while.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I did collect a Wolverine. I'm going to sound like such a hypocrite right now. So out of the 3 books that I've ever bought of Wolverine, there was a Deadpool one with him, where the blue background and they were fighting each other. So that's how I first got introduced to Deadpool. Okay. So moving on. This is going to be a hard one, guys. Are you ready? Yeah? Yeah.
I was born ready.
All right. Favorite all-time Marvel movie?
Thor
Oh.
2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that.
It really does. It does the best job of working in Thor lore, which Ragnarok totally failed on. Ragnarok did a good job of providing decent visual fights and making a Thor movie mostly about Hulk. But Thor 2 featured 8 out of 9 realms from Simonson's run. It featured characters from Simonson's run, including Malekith and Curse and Algrim the Strong. It does so much. It's such perfect fan service. It's a fantasy epic starring Thor and the Warriors 3, and nobody liked it because nobody reads Thor.
Real quick though, I do want to say this does exclude Sony and or X-Men right now. So it's only Marvel produced studio.
That's
Balls.
bullshit.
It's okay, you guys can yell at me later, but I did say Marvel.
Spider-Man 2 would have been
Well,
the
now I
second
can't
choice.
vote for Blade Trinity. Thanks a lot.
Sorry. Not sorry.
Not sorry.
All right. Who do you guys
It's okay,
want
you weren't
to-
voting for Blade Trinity.
I might have done it just.
A side note, I agree with John about all the Thor stuff. Like we see eye to eye completely on the Thor movies. So favorite MCU
Yes,
movie then?
I'm sorry. That's how I should have presented it.
Yeah, thanks, Bri. I'd have to say Iron Man 1. Just Iron Man 1 for me is where it really started. I mean, I actually really like the sequels, probably more than most of the people I know, especially Iron Man 2.
I love that movie.
You know,
I hated 3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see, that's the thing. I can't get enough of Robert Downey Jr.'s. I mean, anytime I read Iron Man dialogue, like in X-Men Red 10, even,
Yeah.
I hear it in his voice, and when you do that, it just makes it so good. I don't know. I just love it. I love everything about it.
So Iron Man 1 for you.
Yeah.
All right, Cody.
All right.
Yeah,
So
go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm just saying it's a tough question. You know, like I've been thinking about it the whole time. These guys have been talking. Robert Downey as Tony Stark is transcendent. He was born to play, and it's hard to not be into that. And you know, Thor 2 is probably the most comic accurate Ragnarok. Thor 2, it kind of comes down to the movies that transcend genre. I'm gonna cop out. Right, so it's a toss-up between Ant-Man and Winter Soldier. Because Ant-Man, if you take Scott Lang out, is still a great heist movie.
Oh yeah.
And Winter Soldier, if you take Cap out, it is still a great spy thriller.
I love
those
that movie.
are great. They're great films. I just watched Winter Soldier the other night when I couldn't sleep.
Winter Soldier is phenomenal. It is really good.
I tried to imagine it as not Cap as I was watching it this time, and it still totally holds up. No superheroes. If this was Jason Bourne, this would be the best goddamn Jason Bourne film we've seen. You know, and if you put Eddie Murphy into Scott Lang's role in Ant-Man and made it Tower Heist or whatever, it would be the best damn heist flick you've ever seen. So, I mean, That's
He had that.
for me.
He had that
that's
spy
my
movie.
reasoning.
That was a good movie. You know the one.
Not off the top of my head, but so that's my cop out answer. I'm giving you two. Deal with it.
No, that's a good answer. Actually, when Winter Soldier came out, I didn't like the first Cap movie. Okay, I watched it and I had some real problems with it. I watched Winter Soldier and I was like, screw it. I'll give Cap 1 a chance. I went and rewatched it. I'm like, and then I realized, again, every now and again, if you go see a movie with certain people, the way they respond while they watch it and how they respond after can affect how you like the mood and the tone of the movie in a way. And this happened to me twice when I've gone to the movies with my buddy and his kid, because his kid would sometimes get bored. And then we kind of start making fun of the movie while we're watching it. Well, that was one of them. I went back and rewatched it and was like, oh, wow, never mind. It was really good. So, yeah.
Hold on. I want to say something on this subject. So I give Cody and JJ so much shit about them talking crap about shows that I like. And because I love Titans. Those two hate it for the most part. I know JJ, you got on board. Hold on.
I hate it now, Brian.
Okay, shut up, Derbs. No, hold on. My reason for getting so angry with them, because one, each week after I watch it, I'm like, oh, that was such a good show. Like, it was good. And then they shit on it. And it ruins the entire experience for me. So, Derbs, I completely understand you. Like, I just... like I hate being the only one in the office that likes a show, and then them just being like, "Oh no, that was shit." I'm like, "Well, okay, yeah, I see your point." And then Cody,
I totally understand.
does random. Don't tell me what to do, because I did tell them. Why are you watching it then? And he's like, "Well, don't tell me what to do." And I was like, "Okay, why
It was actually after I realized that's what happened during Cap 1. It doesn't affect me anymore. Like, nobody's opinion affects how I feel about shit anymore.
Yeah, no, I kind of feel the same way, because I still like Titans. I have our boss Ross, who still likes it, so we're half and half, or at least 20% of us like it. Okay.
I'm not saying everything about it is shit. I'm not. I'm just I'm not going to get into it.
Okay, so my favorite movie actually is a Captain America movie. It is probably Civil War or Winter Soldier. I'm probably going to give it to... I'm probably going to have to give it to Civil War. Oh, okay. I was actually looking at Cody in the bottom screen. I was like, so what's next? I forgot I have one more question. Sorry, it's been a long day. All right, so your favorite Marvel villain. Who wants to take this? I'll actually go first on this one because I know who it is. My favorite Marvel villain, probably, and I had to go back to the X-Men, and he also appeared in Stan Lee's very first X-Men ever, Magneto. I know that he sometimes is a good guy, or at least sides with the X-Men, but I got to go with Magneto because he's my favorite person not to like. Him, yeah. So who else knows right off the hand who their favorite Marvel villain is?
I can give you one.
All right, go for it.
So I don't know about favorite, but again, in keeping with the tone of the night, probably one of my favorite villains that Stan Lee created is the Prowler. Prowler is a pretty underused villain, I feel, but he's not even necessarily a villain. He was doing the conflicted anti-hero thing 30 years before Venom. He started out as a guy who wanted to steal some jewels and then return them as himself in order to get the credit and look like a hero to impress his wife. But Spider-Man caught him and saw something in him, and rather than throwing him in jail, he gave him the opportunity to return the jewels without fanfare, and Hobie Brown, the conflicted anti-hero, was born. Later, following the death of Captain Stacy, the Prowler saw Spider-Man harassing Gwen Stacy and donned his Prowler gear and took on Spider-Man a second time, not as a villain, but as a hero. And again, this is X-Men, or not X-Men. You guys keep saying X-Men. Amazing Spider-Man number 93 from 1968. So this is, 25 years before Venom was introduced, 30 years before Venom was kind of started the conflicted anti-hero route, 10 years before, or 7 years before Punisher was introduced. Like, this is the blueprint to me of the conflicted anti-hero. The person who is frowned upon or who is looked down on, but he just wants to do the right thing. And Prowler has always been kind of interesting to me. He's also a black hero that is around the same time as Black Panther, probably a little bit before, but he's one of the earlier black, black characters who was an interesting layered hero rather than a villain, or not at all.
And for those viewers who might not have caught it, Prowler actually showed up in Spider-Man: Homecoming, played by Donald Glover. So I thought that was a really interesting nod when they did that.
Did you see his tweet recently that he realized at age 22 that his name was Don Glover?
Yeah, I did. It was hilarious. I'm
Donald
still
Glover's
laughing about it.
so damn funny. He's a funny dude.
Also, just so we're on this subject, I do want to mention that Jack Kirby and Stan Lee both created Black Panther.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you go? Who's left to go on this one?
Me and Derbs. Let Derbs go.
Derbage.
I can't have Wolverine without Sabretooth. They're like the same character for me in my head. And when I was a kid, I always thought it was amazing that I love Wolverine. I wouldn't say I'm like the Wolverine guy, but there's too much love for me to spread around all of the Jim Lee era, 90s X-Men. But Sabretooth, was the one guy that beat Wolverine. It's the one guy that Wolverine never beat. And I thought that was pretty mythical for me. It reminded me of it just when I was in grade school, I was really big into Greek mythology. And it kind of felt the same when I got a bit older. It had that same feel to it. He was this kind of big, angrier, better version of the guy who's the best at what he does. Somebody who does it better. Man, his run in Gambit's first self-titled run, Sabretooth's part in that was freaking amazing. Like, they made him complicated, and I don't know, I fell in love. However, you have to be careful going and Wikipediaing your favorite villains or your favorite kind of your favorite characters that don't really get a lot of face time, because their origins and how they evolve and stuff gets pretty convoluted and kind of like, oh, really? Is that really? Because in my head, I'm thinking, it's amazing. And then I read Sabretooth one time. I was just like, oh my God, that's dumb. But, dumb stuff happens to him, and, just stuff that's not interesting. And anyway, but still love him on the whole.
Shit, I'm up, huh? I've been racking my brain. And honestly,
Marvel's greatest villain, Brian Michael Bendis.
Pow. Bam. Pop. I'm having a really difficult time with this one. Because one of the strengths of Marvel is that the hero-villain dichotomy is not static. It's very fluid, that people move back and forth. Like, Brian gave Magneto as an example of his favorite villain, and there are times where Magneto is my favorite villain. There are other times where Magneto is my favorite hero.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had to pick one ultimately, but I mean, if you look over here, I've got Sabretooth and Magneto right by each other. I mean, you just have to pick one, man.
Right, but I mean, to me, picking a favorite villain in Marvel, like, how do you go about doing such a thing?
Sentiment.
I
You cheat like me with the conflicted anti-hero. Ha ha!
Nostalgia.
that's solid. I think I'm going to go with Kingpin on this one. And even there, Kingpin always has that element of, you know, he's not necessarily evil. You know, he doesn't have a pinky in the air and, you know, ransoming people for $1 billion, but he is probably the closest to always on the wrong side as I can think of. Non-powered, but incredibly powerful. Fat, but strong. Like, he feels to me, you know, he first appeared in Spider-Man, later becomes like the quintessential Daredevil villain, you know, corporate greed versus on the streets, Catholic private attorney. The calmness in him, and, you know, if we most of us have just recently finished watching Daredevil season 3, where we see the
I'm
brilliant
halfway
performance.
through. No spoilers.
No spoilers, I promise. But the brilliant performance from Vincent D'Onofrio, which, I mean, if that doesn't get an Emmy, they're not paying attention. They're doing it wrong.
If he doesn't, fuck the Emmys.
Yeah, because, I mean, that was one of the most powerful performances I've ever seen in my life. And, I mean, it persisted through all 13 episodes. Every episode, that entire villain's journey was remarkable. So, yeah, I guess I'm going to go with Kingpin. So,
Can I change my answer?
It's all about that disintegrator, Kane.
I mean, like, you know, there's so many strong villains. You know, I'm thinking in my head, like, is it Galactus? Is it Thanos? Is it, you know, one of these great cosmic entities? And for me, that's never going to be the case.
Dr.
Yeah,
Doom.
I'm not. But yeah, Doctor Doom is another one of those great examples of, is he a villain? Sometimes, but not all the time.
I love that every time Doctor Doom walks into a room, he's speaking at full volume. It's like, you just imagine Doom shouting everybody in the room down, and that just delights me. Like, fool! What are you thinking? Who dares?
Who dares?
Who dares?
Drink every time Doom says who dares.
Oh my god, it's like, well, honestly though, it's kind of the Fantastic Four villain catchphrase, because it seems like they all say it, but who dares?
Well, that's where the Venture Brothers vibe comes from. Like, the whole vibe, the Venture Brothers from Adult Swim. That's where that whole vibe comes from. I love it.
Silver Age Marvel. That's a big part of the Venture Brothers and old Johnny Quest and stuff.
All right, that ends it for this week's questions. I think we're ready to get on with one or two reviews for the week. I know that we had a lot to cover this week, so let's see. I think we're covering Green Arrow. Is that right? No, maybe
Green Lantern.
Negative. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
One of the green.
One of the green ones from DC.
Yeah.
We're gonna cover that.
Why don't we try to smash through these 3 reviews fairly quickly? Because they were great books and they deserve to be talked about, even in the, you know, under the specter of the passing of Stan Lee. He wouldn't want us to not talk about what was great in comics this week, I think.
Yeah, he'd want us to talk about comics. I mean, straight up.
More so.
So let's do these. Let's try to keep them short, you know, so that our 3 or 4 fans don't have to spend 2.5 hours watching our show.
And they say fans, I say thank you for pitting us and watching our show.
If you made it to this point in the show, we do apologize.
As always. All right, JJ, I think this is your book that you're reviewing, so go ahead.
All right, talking about the Green Lantern #1 from Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp. The great Grant Morrison returns to DC Comics. I know he wrote on the Sideways Annual on the same day, and he wrote The Dark Knight's Rising Wild Hunt last year with Scott Snyder. But to me, this feels like Grant Morrison's legitimate return to the DC Comics universe. And I know that this book it's a little overdense for some folks. It's a little Morrison-y for some folks in that it references a lot of older storylines, and there's some lines that the thing about Morrison is pretty much every panel could be a throwaway reference to something. There's some weird stuff in there, like there's a point where some tourists are driving by Hal Jordan fighting some aliens who look like humans on the side of the road, and they say, "Look, don't worry, don't look, kids. They're training for bum fights." And it's like, the fuck is Morrison talking about bum fights in a comic book I paid $5 for? But it could be a thing, it could be nothing, and that's Morrison in a nutshell. Like the paramecium or the germ that's a Green Lantern in the first 3 panels, is he in the what was he? The antimatter being that was taken prisoner by the controllers, and is he going to pop up in a few issues? Knowing Morrison, probably. He's probably hiding in that guy right now, gathering intel. The Guardians mention X-ray lanterns, ultraviolet lanterns. If you read Silver Age Green Lanterns or Green Lantern, is there a possibility those characters show up? Very, very good possibility. Someone else mentioned that Chrysalon looked different and acted different than it did, but this is Chaselon, who could be the same race and a different individual entirely. Likewise, I noticed that one thing that I did notice is that there was a what are the chicken people called? You know the ones. Tomar 2's one. Drawing a blank. So it was a big deal that there was only allowed to be one of them during Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps when Tomar 2 was arrested following the execution of Romat Rue. They appointed a new one, and it was made a big deal that there was only supposed to be one at a time, and there's one of them here who we haven't seen before and who isn't mentioned by name, but it isn't the Brian's getting the last of his wine bottle. I do also have to say the art. It's important to note that the art by Liam Sharp is great for 70% of the book. The other 30% is there's panels where the faces are off model. There's characters that are physically weird. There's one panel one full page spread on I think it was page 22. I noted it in my written review on Comic Watch, but it's just Hal Jordan's body looks really weirdly proportioned. It almost looks like a stained glass window, so I am curious if it's intentional. It's one of those things where it's hard to, again, with the Morrison stuff, it's hard to say if this was an intentional reference or if, for all I know, I'm not well versed in stained glass windows. For all I know, this is a reference to a stained glass window in France or something. That's the kind of thing Morrison likes to pull. And, it's borderline impossible to know every single reference Morrison's going to throw out on any given book. And that's Morrison in a nutshell. All in all, I really liked this issue. I'm going to keep buying it and reading it. And, you can count on more reviews in the future from me.
So for
anybody else read it?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I read it. Anything you guys tell me that you guys are bringing to the show, I try to read it. So I did read Green Lantern. It was cool. I liked it. But my only thing is I don't have any past experiences with Green Lantern. So it kind of gets confusing a little bit. I don't know a lot of there seem to be a couple of references that I'm not familiar with that I think JJ pointed out later to me. But I thought it was a good book. I'll continue reading it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I do have a long history with Hal Jordan and Green Lantern, and I have a long history with Grant Morrison. So for me, it was almost the perfect storm, that Silver Age call out nature, but also the I don't know if any of you guys have read Grant Morrison's 3-issue miniseries, Sea Guy. But there were like that bum fights thing kind of reminded me of the type of humor that was prevalent in Sea Guy or like in his Flex Metallo miniseries. Like there's something about this character that he's almost like blending. It feels like he took Sea Guy and Hal Jordan and space opera and like CSI and put it in a blender and then drank it and then resurrected it, and this is Grant Morrison's The Green Lantern. And I'm pretty excited about it personally. Derbs, did you have anything to say about Green Lantern? No. Derbs, tell us about X-Men Red number 10.
Okay. I liked it. Back to you. No,
That's an awesome review. All right.
So, Tom Taylor. Holy crap. I really like him. Do you guys know of any projects he's attached to after X-Men Red? Like
Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and Batman Annual number 3 coming out mid-December.
Batman Annual?
Real quick, was he the one that was attached to All New Wolverine?
Yes, sir.
That guy is a god. I will read anything that he makes.
He also did Injustice 2.
Oh.
I think he's writing Injustice versus Masters of the Universe right now also.
He's amazing.
That's so weird.
Go ahead.
That is so bizarre. The Masters of the Universe crossover. I was such a He-Man kid.
Injustice is so good. Cody won't read it, but it's so good.
I was a He-Man kid. I didn't do anything else really. We were too poor. We could only do one IP, and that was He-Man. No G.I. Joes, and then it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Anyway, I'm drunk. So Cassandra Nova has telepathically taken taken hostage 12 commercial airliners and a South Korean Central Intelligence helicarrier, which I didn't know they had. Thanks for sharing, Shield. And they've set their courses for Genosha. So Cassandra's, jerking out. She's a jerk. I said out, Brian. She has also used a computer-generated Jean Grey to falsely declare war on humanity in the name of mutant kind. So, essentially, Honey Badger asks Jean, if you're as strong as she is, how would you stop yourself? And she decides to contact Tony Stark and is able to arm the Atlanteans that Namor brings from Atlantis with anti-telepathic helmets, all painted like Magneto's helmet, which I didn't think was necessary. Like we would have known, but they did paint them red and purple, which was, it was great.
But it's Genosha. Like, if you're gonna roll up on Genosha with an army, why not fly Eric's colors?
Because
there's a nostalgia sense there. There's almost vengeance for Genosha there that I really appreciated.
No, I understand. I know.
Real quick, I really enjoyed how Cody was like, Eric, like we're all friends, we all know each other. Like everything's cool, he hold up on the homies.
That's what I do too. I always do it when I'm generally on my own. I'm always calling the X-Men by their first name.
Right.
What do you do?
To us, like I don't know anybody else in any other. Anyways, go on. I can go on forever.
See, to me, Batman's first name is Batman. So
that's because Bruce Wayne is the Mask.
It's probably because, yeah, exactly. That's what
I
Bruce
do always
thinks,
get
too.
I do always get kind of conflicted when I write Superman reviews on whether to call him Clark Kent or Kal-El. But I always call him Clark. I don't know why.
Because that's what makes him great.
Although
Clark
I
makes him great.
liked Superman's interview in the last Crisis book, how he talks about possibly not really being either. I did like that. Anyway, so essentially, Cassandra has fooled all of her hostages, in particular the South Korean military, into thinking that they're on the front line of the next world war against the mutants. And what was great was when all the mutants show up, and I'm like, well, let's see, Stark helped them out, but thanks for the helmets. Where the hell is Iron Man? I mean, thanks, Stark. And this is a very typical comic book thing, right? Every now and again, because I really comic book fans focus on details. We're just nerds. We are combing for detail. And he did it. He not only brought Iron Man, but he brought the Avengers. And it made me so happy. It really did. I was just so happy because he not only paid attention, he went above and beyond. And now they're just going to beat the shit out of Genosha probably, and some twist is going to happen, and who knows what's going to happen, but I'm really excited for the next one. I wish it was going and going and going. I wish it was going to be ongoing, but oh well. What do you do?
Just for the record, for people who are watching this, if you're still with us, seeing Derbs get this exciting about it, it's amazing. Just a side thing. I read it.
Do I have some type of unnatural flat affect? Am I like a sociopath? Is that what you're saying? Like, they're just not.
What are you drinking tonight, Derbs? It sounds great.
I know.
just really high alcohol content beer.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Beer.
Yeah. So I do want everybody to know, if you've reached it to this point, our AKA our show is called The Comic Watchers, AKA Cocktails and Comics, or Comics and Cocktails. I did read the book. When I first read it, I didn't like it, but I was also really tired, and it was kind of one of those things that I had to currently just read because I know it was going to be reviewed. However, after a few days after I read it, I kept going back to it in my mind, and that's how I know it was actually a really good book. Although at first the Magneto helmets really annoyed me, I actually enjoyed it because, like Cody said, it was Genosha, I mean, the creator of it, et cetera, et cetera. So I liked it. Did anybody else read it? I know Cody read it.
I did, and if you want my thoughts on it, I'm going to force you to go to the site, check out my the review that I wrote on X-Men Red number 10.
Diabolical.
Primarily, my focus was on the timing of the issue, the fact that it came out and was released just after the U.S. elections, the midterm elections, and the divisions and false dichotomies that we create amongst ourselves on social media. And I thought that was really the most poignant part. So please go read that review.
That's all your review is. It's a meta analysis. It was great. That's why I didn't cover it, because I'm like, I'll do the rest. Just go read Cody's review. It's great.
Thank you.
And to read more reviews, go to comic-watch.com.
Shameless.
So real quick, I do want to throw a little bit of love to a book that a lot of you might have missed. I don't know if the sales figures aren't out yet, but Marvel Knights 20th Anniversary #1 came out this week. It's a bi-weekly series. I believe it's alternating writers between Donny Cates and Matthew Rosenberg. This first issue had Travel Foreman on the art. If Travel Foreman is your thing, you're going to love it. If he's not your thing, you might not love it. I understand he's one of those kind of love him or hate him type of artists. I like him quite a bit. Marvel Knights 20th, it's celebrating the 20th anniversary of, going back, I mean, how can we escape it? Going back to Stan Lee. The innovation that he brought in 1961 to Marvel Comics, then Timely Comics, is the same kind of thing that I felt like we watched in 1998 with Joe Quesada and the Marvel Knights imprint. He creates an imprint where
Papa
he
Spicy Queso.
can Papa
I hope
Spicy
he
Queso.
I hope he watches this. Papa Spicy Queso, I love you.
I can promise you he's not watching this.
I highly doubt that Mr. Quesada is watching this, but if he happens to, I felt like that spirit of Stan Lee's innovation really shone through with Marvel Knights. I remember picking up my first couple Marvel Knights books back in 1998 and thinking, like, holy crap, this is what comics could be. Like, they were ahead of the curve. They were doing post 9/11 superheroes in 1998, returning them to their roots. Darker, grittier stories. They weren't laden down with continuity. You pick up that miraculous Marvel Knights Daredevil run, which JJ just recently read, right? It starts with Kevin Smith and Quesada. It moves to David Mack. It moves to Bendis and Maleev. Then it moves to Brubaker, and then on to Mark Waid. I mean, on so on and so on. Like, it was just the best run on the character you could ever ask for.
The 10-issue run from issues 95 through 105 is arguably one of the better large-scale arcs I've ever read. Any event, anything. There's 10 issues there. I think I spoke about it right after I read it on the show, so I won't bore you with the details. But Daredevil issues 95 through 105, arguably 10 of the best written comics I've ever read.
Right. And, you go back to this notion of what's your favorite MCU movie? One of my favorites was Black Panther, and that was sketched out in the Christopher Priest, Mark Teixeira 13-issue Black Panther Marvel Knights series. Marvel Knights gave us Ennis and Dillon on Punisher. It gave us so many just absolutely brilliant titles. So this 20th anniversary event, I'll call it, is really a love letter from Donny Cates so far to the history of Marvel Knights, and this idea that they're existing right now in a world where nobody remembers who they are, and they don't remember who they are. So, like, superheroes are absent even though their alter egos are present. I don't know where this is going. I do kind of feel like this is some sort of meta commentary on fandom and perhaps creators and their kind of short attention span. But wherever this goes, it was a really great story. The art was fantastic. If you didn't pick it up, go do so. The next issue comes out not this week, but the following week, and it'll be bi-weekly moving from there, 6 issues. If you have any affinity for any, whether it's the Bruce Jones run on Incredible Hulk, whether it's Mark Millar and, God help me, Derek Robertson's run on Fury, any of these various Marvel Knights properties, it's worth looking into.
I have Fury Max.
Fury Max was Ennis and Robertson, I believe. But anyway, yeah, and Max spins out of Marvel Knights too, in a way. Like, it's a mature readers, whereas Marvel Knights is like, it's a mature readers. They're not swearing, they're not excessive blood, but these are books that are going to make you think about them for, I mean, in my case, for decades that I go back and think about some of these books and think, God damn, the way that Bruce Jones depicted the Banner Hulk polarity is brilliant. Is absolutely brilliant and has never been matched before or after. So
I read it. I liked it. I didn't read the first one because that was kind of the time when I wasn't reading comics for whatever god awful reason. I actually really, and you can ask Ross, you can ask Cody. I'm a huge art snob, so if something's not to what I like, I'm like, no. I enjoyed the art. I didn't see anything wrong with it. I think it's a great story. I'm a little lost, but I talked to Cody a little bit earlier. There was nothing that, I mean, I was like, well, is their memory wiped because of something that happened before? No, it's a whole new story. So definitely check it out. I recommend it. Anybody, you two read it?
I absolutely did. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was really good, really well in the tone of the original multiple series that it's emulating. Um, I love the memory loss aspect because, as Cody said, it felt like kind of a jab at Marvel's current issues with continuity. Continuity is pretty much dead at Marvel at this point. As you guys mentioned, the X-Men or the Avengers showed up in X-Men Red. Does that mean anything's going to change with the Avengers number 10 next week? No.
Actually, the in the previously on page, the titles page, they mentioned that everything happening in Red happened before Avengers 700.
Oh, nice.
That's just the easy way to cop out and say
it is, but at least they acknowledged it and recognized that, this could be a problem for some people.
Yeah, well, it's like Deathstroke versus Batman, which I thought was fine. But where does this place take place in continuity? Does this play take place at the beginning of Morrison's run? It could. Does it take place in the New 52? It could. Does it take place towards the tail end of Rebirth? It could. Does it take place right now? It might. I don't know. And that's my issue with Marvel is every comic is treated that way right now. It's like the Avengers showed up in Immortal Hulk number 8. Does that mean that they're going to be all beat up in Avengers number 700? Or they show up in Immortal Hulk number 7, Sorry. Does that mean they're going to be all beat up next issue of Avengers? No. Namor was in Avengers number 9. Does that mean Namor is going to be pissed off at the Avengers in X-Men Red? Probably, because Namor is always pissed off at the Avengers. But that has nothing to do with continuity. Likewise, Punisher or Daredevil showed up in Punisher last issue. Does that mean Daredevil's going to mention it in his next issue of Daredevil? No. And that's a huge problem at Marvel right now, I feel.
Hey, is Daredevil dying?
Yeah, probably.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So Charles Soule is...
Maybe he's faking
Charles
it.
Soule
He
is
faked his
killing him.
death twice in like 20 issues back in the 70s with the Mike Murdock, and then he faked Matt Murdock's death. Matt Murdock, for some reason, was on a private plane in Canada, and that private plane crashed. Oh, that's good. That's a Roy Thomas issue too. I usually expect more from Roy Thomas.
I will not have you besmirch Mr. Thomas on my watch.
He had Matt Matt heard it.
I know. I've read it.
I made a joke about it. Matt hears a glow because he saw a glow over the hill, and he's like, "What's that glow coming?" I'm like, "How the fuck's he see a glow?"
And if you've made it to this point in the show, we apologize.
Anyway, let's move on to Future Watch. This is one hell of a week.
Oh my god, I'm gonna be a penniless hobo.
This is.
I was gonna actually talk to you about this. We may have to wait to read any X-Men until the next week because I don't think I'm gonna be able to read any of this. I mean, like, there's so much good stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cody. Go ahead.
So no, please go ahead. I'm still opening up my list.
Okay, so Uncanny X-Men number 1 is coming out. Fantastic Four number 3, after many delays, is coming out. By the way, Marvel, stop fucking up on the delays, because I got super into it back in August. Now it's November, near the end of November. No, middle of November, and I had to wait for number 3. Let's see what else. What else is going on? Derbs, are you looking forward to anything?
Really, Avengers coming out.
Yeah, I'm super looking forward to it as well. Superman number 5 is coming out. Red Hood Outlaws is coming out, which I think I'm the only one that's ever excited about that one.
I need to start reading it. I've kind of dropped the ball on it. Now I'm probably going to have to get a trade because I'm a few issues back. Red
Hood is actually one of my favorite running DC titles. Also, Spider-Geddon tie-in is coming out, which I'm really excited about because I did my first Spider-Man Geddon review. I read a whole 13 books of Spider-Man or Spider-Man related crap for Spider-Geddon. It was pretty good. All right, somebody please.
Yeah.
help.
So yeah, we've got Hawkman #6 coming out from Robert Venditti and Brian Hitch, which has just been, to me, one of the knockout books of the year. Mr. Miracle #12, the finale of Mr. Miracle, is coming out. New issue of Captain America, the Ta-Nehisi Coates and Little Francis Yu series. We got the first issue of Black Order. We have the first issue of the Force Quest arc in Flash. G. Willow Wilson's first issue on Wonder Woman #58. So, she's bringing over Miss Marvel run into Wonder Woman at a time when Wonder Woman is actually a really hot property with all the Witching Hour stuff. So I expect that book to be talked about a lot. The finale of Justice League Aquaman Drowned Earth is coming out, so yay, it's over. Oh, am I wrong? I'm wrong on that. I apologize. That is a little ways down the line. It's not over.
You got my
the finale of Cosmic Ghost Rider. There's a lot of stuff. Supergirl #24 is coming out. Supergirl is I'm not reading it, but I've heard that it's a really hot book right now. So for those of you that happen to be Supergirl fans, that's a thing. There's a lot coming out. The first issue of William Gibson's Aliens 3 treatment from Dark Horse.
My God, Cody, you've said my entire poll. Not quite, but you're close.
I've taken over personnel allocations for Comic Watch, so now I know everything that's coming out.
All right, guys. I think we've hit that time of the show where we close the show out.
Hang on, I got mine still. He didn't say literally everything. This week I have Amazing Spider-Man #9, Avengers #10, Cosmic Ghost Rider #5, Detective Comics #992, Fantastic Four #3, Gideon Falls #8, Hawkman #6, Mr. Miracle #12, Supergirl 24, Superman 5, Thor 7, Venom #8, William Gibson Alien 3 #1, and Conan Omnibus Volume 7.
It's a huge week. We will have no shortage of things to talk about next week for sure.
Gideon Falls.
I know, I'm so damn excited. Nobody even cares, and it's great.
I care.
You care. We care.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us in this very special and emotional episode. In closing, I'm not going to actually close out how I normally do, saying subscribe or anything else. I do want to say, Stan Lee, thank you for everything. Me personally, you gave me a safe haven when my real life was in chaos. Thank you for making me feel normal when I thought I wasn't. Thank you for being the voice that I couldn't find one. Your legacy will live on forever. And us at Comic Watch is grateful for the world that you helped create and giving us an industry that we can be part of and bringing us together. Rest in peace, Excelsior. We will carry on everything you have taught us. Thank you.
Excelsior!
Two of you. The odds are getting better and better.
Yeah, maybe you cut down on that fried chicken, huh?
Go ahead. Run. I'll be watching for you.